Hello and welcome. My name is Chris Cam with Mining Journal, and with me I have Peter Bryant, Board Chair for US-based energy transition and mining consultancy, Clareo. This is part of a three-part series on mining's role in green industrialisation and how that could transform Saudi Arabia. Today, Peter and I are going to discuss the evolving face of responsible sourcing. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me today. Looking forward to the discussion.
Our pleasure. I would have thought personally that there are plenty of examples these days of responsibly sourced metals from modern mining operations. Maybe not enough, but quite a few. But you talk about the need to completely overhaul the way we operate to achieve responsible sourcing.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, Chris, this is important. I think when the standards were developed and where we are as a world today, times have changed. And whilst the industry has made some progress, there's too many standards. And you talk to downstream companies, they just want one standard. They don't want to deal with copper and lithium and aluminium standard. That's one. I think I tell the industry they need to be bold and say we'll become net positive contributors to the environment, to the economies, and to social aspects, and lift the bar, and get away from this compliance risk management mindset. And my last point, just hammer on, because I used to be an auditor many decades ago, way back when I left college, is none of this is auditable. We only trust financial statements because auditors go, and nobody audits any of these things at all. And last point is, I don't know if you just saw a recent Bloomberg deep dive analysis on bauxite mined in Brazil, destroying the Amazon, traced back into Rio Tinto and other aluminium smelters. And everybody was saying, no, it's all responsibly sourced. And again, that's because it's not auditable and it's hard to trace. So we do need to kind of revamp this because there's just so many things that are different now.
This might be an unfair question to throw at you, Peter, but you've talked about the landscape being difficult, and we've made comments that are very similar. I think the last time we counted, there were about 43 different standards just for mining. I think you've quoted there being 600 ESG standards and certification schemes. So it is an absolute quagmire for corporates to try and wade through.
Yeah.
How do you actually get it to a point where there is one standard, or one standard with derivatives maybe that are commodity specific, that also incorporates those stakeholders that you mentioned at the moment are framed as risks? How can they be part of these standards?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure. I think the catalyst is going to come from two places. One is the downstream companies, because right now, I think whilst the mining industry has standards, I don't think they meet the bar set by the downstream companies. So at the end of the day, we have to deliver products that meet or exceed the standards of the ultimate end user, car companies, etc., and the promises they're making to their consumers. If we fail at that, then it's not. So we've got to become much more customer focused. That's one, which we're not as an industry. And the other one is through kind of the markets. So, and I can't remember the name, kind of the equivalent of, the Financial Standards Board. So they've collapsed into a single standard now. So I think at some point, all the standards have to agree to collapse into one. And give up, I'm important. So I think there's kind of tension in the system, all these standards. I think there's ways to go. And the challenge, Chris, frankly, is whilst all these standards are playing out, what do I do in the meantime? So DPI has formed this thing called the Responsible Sourcing Coalition, which is the only persistent dialogue around what are the things we need to do to achieve the ambition of responsible sourcing. And they've just laid out four work streams to make that happen. That's kind of an exciting opportunity. And that really precedes standards. So
it feels like some of the issues that the mining industry has to actually satisfy stakeholder groups and be able to agree on a set of standards would require a complete transformation of the industry. And I think when I probably opened up and I said there are metals that are responsibly sourced, they're probably responsibly sourced by today's standards of operation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about getting alignment only through a complete transformation of the industry, things like tailings dams being a thing of the past, emissions being overhauled, reduced beyond current relative levels? What are we talking about to actually make this real?
So I think this is where we get out. It's not about sand. So it is about reinventing mining, reimagining mining, as some CEOs would call it. So that, and the Saudis call it modern mining. So we have to mine entirely differently. We have to reduce energy intensity. We have to, not use water essentially. Ma'aden's doing a total closed loop water where they're taking all the wastewater from all the cities and turning it into grey water and stop using the aquifers. So get rid of water intensity, energy intensity, and reduce waste to zero waste. until we can do that, it's really hard to see how we meet the ESG standards. One of the things I lament is the intense focus around emissions. And whilst that's important, I think it diminishes the focus on all these other areas. And ultimately, the last thing, which is, I think, the most important, is as Indigenous people reframe how mining impacts them economically, socially, environmentally, and are demanding a very different way. And I've heard Aboriginal leaders in Australia say, if mining companies think they're going to come and talk to us like they used to, forget, that's not going to happen. So until we kind of address these issues, and the only way it goes back to, Chris, is this multi-stakeholder dialogue. You sit down without power in the room and go, okay, what is it we all want? And that's how you do trade-offs. You're like, so, and right now, I don't think we have the level of understanding and trust between all the parties that need to sit down to really move the needle on this one. So, and we really need to lean into it, I think.
And Saudi Arabia, an opportunity there with not a completely immature mining sector, but starting from scratch, essentially, or definitely relative to the aspirations and the ambitions around Vision 2030. Is there an opportunity there to build a different responsibly sourced metals framework compared to the way that the industry would think about it today?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Again, the ambition is they really are focused on how do you accelerate innovation to create that new mining approach. Two, they're setting up, how do we create through another center of excellence, that kind of multi-stakeholder dialogue, how you get there. And then they're kind of wrestling with, and is there an opportunity to develop kind of the next generation standard as a result of that? So, and I think all of that requires collaboration. And I don't think you can do, particularly the last one, you can't do it in isolation. And the thing I think about is how do you satisfy standards that are set by stock market regulators for your, for that, and B, meet your own standards. And that's why my last point is, miners need to set the bar so high that it exceeds anything governments expect, anything a standard expects, and say, we don't know how we're going to get to all of these ambitions, but that's where we're going. And you have to be open and honest. You don't have all the answers, right?
Peter, Bryant, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Chris. Enjoyed it.